But Kevin says, God bless you, Anthony. I was curious to how do you interpret John chapter 15? Who are the branches and what is the fire? Yeah, so John 15, I think that a lot of people have difficulty there when they shouldn't, because uh, what the assumption is that you have, uh, because it talks about branches being broken off and then cast into the fire, worthless branches. The idea is here you have true Christians who were bearing good fruit now being lost, right? That's the idea of some as they read this. Just quickly, since I don't want to get too far into this, and uh, when really, I mean, I could spend a whole show on this, and maybe I will. It's actually worth doing a whole show on. But notice this. Uh, Jesus says in John 15, I'm the true vine, my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it so that it may bear more fruit. So notice this. The branches that are cut off do not bear fruit. It's not that you have these branches that initially are bearing fruit and then at some point stop bearing fruit and then he cuts them off. These are from the get-go lifeless branches, right? These are branches that do not bear fruit. Jesus goes on in verse 3, you are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. He's speaking to the apostles. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he's thrown away as a branch and dries up, and they gather them and cast them into the fire, and they're burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. So all throughout this text, Jesus is indicating a fundamental distinction between the branches. There are those that don't bear fruit, won't bear fruit, can't bear fruit. Those will be cut off. Those that do bear fruit, the Father will prune them so that they'll bear more fruit. And in bearing fruit, it says they will prove to be Christ's disciples. So I don't take this text as at all upsetting the doctrine of the preservation and consequent perseverance of the saints. Uh, and there's a lot more that can be said about that. There's actually one of the best treatments of this text that I've seen. And it's unfortunate sometimes when some of these things are tucked away in places where I think most people wouldn't even know where to look for them. And I wouldn't have thought to look in this place either, because uh, it just the title doesn't suggest that this is where this would be. But there was a book written many years ago called, I think it was the Federal Vision Pros and Cons. And the editor of the book was Calvin Beisner. Now, Beisner, man, that guy's a giant of an intellect, a great logician. And he used to do a lot of apologetic stuff many years ago. In fact, one of my favorite debates between Trinitarians and oneness advocates was Walter Martin and Calvin Beisner side by side against two oneness Pentecostals. I think it was Robert Sabin and Nathaniel Urshan, or one of the guys might have been who's the most popular oneness debater? Bernard, David Bernard. It might have been David Bernard and Nathaniel Urshan. Anyways, the, I kind of they've faded from memory, and the ones that stand out are Martin and Beisner. But Beisner was awesome when it came to debating. And eventually, he wrote several things. He wrote a book called God in Three Persons. He wrote a book, or a pamphlet really, for the Zondervan countercult series called Jesus Only Churches, which is a book written in response to oneness Pentecostalism, not Pentecostalism, right? But oneness Pentecostalism. So the anti-Trinitarian Pentecostals. And I mean, it's an excellent book, and it's he said in there in a footnote. I know Beisner personally, by the way, so we've had some conversation, and in a footnote in that book or in that pamphlet, he says he was writing a larger book, and the years rolled on, and I didn't see anything, and I eventually met him, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on with this book?" And he mentioned it was finished, but something happened in the process of trying to get it published, and he just sort of gave up on that. And then his interest sort of took another direction where he started to focus on other issues, right? As a Christian, I mean, he's trying to tackle some other issues, not apologetically related. And I never really did get to ask him why his interests went in that direction, but I wish he was still around doing apologetic stuff. But in that book, The Federal Vision, Pros and Cons, edited by Calvin Beisner, there's a section towards the end of it. It's an appendix, I believe, on John 15. Excellent, excellent, excellent treatment of that text in relation to the question of the preservation and perseverance of the saints. So if you're looking for something more detailed than what I've just given you, go check that out.